Welcome to Estate Planning Beyond the Binder.
Welcome back to Estate Planning Beyond the Binder with Brian Chu. Brian is the managing partner at OC Wills and Trust, and for more than 25 years, he's helped families across Orange County protect their homes, savings, and legacies with thoughtful estate planning. I'm Chelsea, and today we're talking about life insurance. Many families think of it as a separate piece of their financial picture, but the way life insurance fits into your estate plan can make a huge difference. Welcome back, Brian.
Thank you, Chelsea. It's great to see you again.
Great to see you. Why is life insurance such an important part of an estate plan for many families?
I mean, it's the classic issue. You know, somebody passes away, they were the primary wage earner. Is how do you replace their income? Okay, that's the insurance component of it. I mean, there's a wealth building component of it potentially as well, but the basic component that most families need, especially those of us who if other people are relying on us, whoever the primary wage earner is, if that person were to pass away, well, that income is gone. How do you replace that? Okay, and yes, maybe you have enough assets, savings and investments and 401ks and stuff like that. Maybe that's enough. But again, depending on when this happens, obviously, God forbid it happens when somebody's young, we're talking about decades of income that's being lost and decade of support that was needed for, especially whether it be a surviving spouse or obviously most importantly, our children. How do we pay for those things? And again, we may or may not have, those assets. And especially when people are starting out, they may not have a lot of significant assets. Okay. And life insurance is, I'm sure most people understand, the basic concept is you pay a premium, you pay a monthly or annual fee to a life insurance company. And if something happens to you, you pass on that the life insurance company will pay X amount of dollars to your family, okay, to the beneficiaries. And obviously, presumably that money is there to ease the fact that that your income needs to be replaced. Okay. At a very basic level, that's, and that's one of the questions as a estate planning attorney. Well, I don't get into the financial planning, like retirement planning and all that kind of stuff. If somebody dies, what happens? Is there enough money? Is there enough money for the family to continue to live the lifestyle they've grown accustomed to, hopefully, if not, and pay for stuff like college and all that other stuff, could be 10, 15, 20 years away.
What are some mistakes that you see when people don't connect their life insurance to their estate plan?
The basic is when my clients come in and let's say they have a life insurance, is now they've named individuals as beneficiaries on there because they didn't have a trust. So they would name individuals. And, if you're married, you name your spouse. And if you had kids, you might probably name the kid. Well, and that's issue number two. Did you name the kids as, hopefully at the very least, you name the kids as the contingent beneficiaries. However, as I've mentioned in previous podcasts, the problem with that is a couple of issues. If things happen unexpectedly, husband names wife as a beneficiary, husband passes away first, wife dies second, before she has a chance to get the money, or that money would go to probate. So the money would go to the kids eventually, but it would go to court and would cost the family tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees and hold the money up for 1 to 2 years. And I've had that happen to a client. So it's unlikely as it has happened to one of my clients. The other is if you have a trust, again, this is assuming you set up a revocable trust, but you still have the kids as beneficiaries individually, and something happens to you, and even if your spouse is not alive, the money would go to your kids. But if they're under 18, that would also go to court, or what we call probate, and that again would cost your family tens of thousands of dollars, and delay the money going to the kids is up to 1 to 2 years. So that's connecting the life insurance to the trust. It's called funding the trust. Just like all your assets, which life insurance is one of them, you need to affiliate at the institutional level that the life insurance policy with the trust. It's not enough in the trust to say this life insurance policy is part of the trust. You have to change at the life insurance company.
You've touched on this in other episodes, but how can naming the wrong beneficiary or forgetting to update a beneficiary create problems down the road?
Obviously, money going to the wrong person, period. I mean, that's an issue. And where we've seen it be disaster, not disaster, but you get married, you have kids, but you had a life insurance policy before that had the money going to your sibling. There's not much your family can do about it. Something happens to you, and you name the sibling as a beneficiary of the money, the sibling goes to beneficiary, and that sibling has no obligation to share any of that money with your family, your spouse and or your kids. So obviously that's the biggest issue, if people not paying attention to, especially when there's life changes, to changing those things to make sure obviously they reflect who they actually want the money to go to, because beneficiary designations override everything. So you could have a will and trust that says everything goes to my spouse and kids. But if you name a beneficiary on any kind of account, life insurance or otherwise, that's where the money's going, because that happens first. The bank doesn't care what your will or trust says. All they care, or the life insurance company, all they care is what does it say on their form.
Why might naming a minor child directly as a beneficiary cause some complications?
As I mentioned, it's not so much they won't get the money. It's the fact that because they're under 18, they cannot have money. They cannot own anything, which then the courts will have to get, the insurance companies will insist that somebody be appointed. And that means somebody's going to have to go to court, even though there's a spouse. Obviously they would be the one, the biological parent, the surviving biological parent, but they would have to be appointed to take control of that money on behalf of that child. Okay. And so obviously that causes delays and expense, legal expense that would otherwise be unnecessary. They just name the trust as the beneficiary. Something happens to you, the money comes to the trust, and the trustee is told what in the trusted document itself is told and authorized to do what they need to do without having to go to court.
In what situations does it make sense to name a trust as the beneficiary on a life insurance policy?
In where my clients have a trust, I pretty much 100% recommend naming the trust the beneficiary, since we want all that money to come to the trust, and then the trustee, the person in charge of the trust, is given instructions what to do, who to use to support. I would say that one and only the only time we recommend naming individuals, if you have a trust, to name an individual as a beneficiary is because you don't want the trust involved. So maybe it's a charity. Instead of having the money come to the trust and the trustee cut a check to the charity, maybe name the charity and they can go get the money directly. Or there's an individual that maybe doesn't get along with the rest of the family so well. Maybe you name but you want to support them. You can name them as a beneficiary and just tell them, if something happens to be, go to the life insurance company, and if you're a 10% beneficiary, they'll give you your 10%. Okay. But the advantage of naming the trust as the beneficiary is, even if, let's say, you had like all adult kids, and let's say you got 3 kids, and you have a bunch of accounts, you name them, the 3 of them individually as beneficiaries. Legally, there's no problem. They can get the money, no problem. But that means each one of them will have to go to every institution where their name is a beneficiary to go get their share. Versus one person who's the trustee goes and collects it all and then redistributes it. So that's advantage of getting the trust, even for circumstances where naming them individually wouldn't make a much difference, but it does make it from an administrative standpoint slightly easier.
How can life insurance help provide liquidity to cover things like estate taxes, debts, or even supporting a surviving spouse?
I mean, the biggest issue with a lot of families is, again, the income's a lot. Obviously, somebody is earning income and they pass away. That's where all the liquid money was coming from, or a lot of the liquid money is coming from. And now that source is gone. You don't have liquid funds, perhaps. We have a lot of families where they have nominal liquid assets, investments in cash, but they got a house. They've got they could have $1 million equity in the house, but you don't want to necessarily have to sell the house. And so, ideally you have life insurance to either, provide that money to take care of the house and or any other debts, because otherwise then you're forced to potentially sell the house, or, forced to sell investments and so on. Again, at the end of the day, you have to do it. If you have to do that, you have to do it, but it'd be nice if they didn't have to, get rid of their security blanket, the savings account. You want that liquid money, but again, it is liquidity. Once somebody passes, absent some of the circumstances you might see in the movies, usually the insurance companies will, cut that check relatively quickly once they have a death certificate.
In blended families, how can life insurance be used to make sure that both a new spouse and children from a prior marriage are both protected?
So in those cases, when we have a client, they're, unfortunately their spouse has passed away. They did, a lot of times, and they have a trust. And that involves, they got all the money, let's say, and that trust says, when they pass, all the money goes to their kids. Okay. And they want to honor that. But at the same time, they want to take care of the new spouse. Well, obviously, getting a life insurance policy would be one of the best ways to do that because it requires minimal commitment. Well, not, I mean, just paying the premiums, pay the premiums on the life insurance. And if something happens to you, then you'll know your new spouse is taken care of. Okay. For however much money, whether that's enough or not, that's a different story. But whatever money you have that policy set up for, they'll get that money and everybody's taken care of. So that's usually the easiest, most straightforward way for somebody to take care of both without really having to change. Again, they have the right. If they want to have the money go to the new spouse, they can. Okay, but if they want to honor the wishes of their the deceased spouse, especially, and take care of the kids ultimately, I'm sure, they'd probably want to keep their own trust intact with its assets, and then use the life insurance as a way to take care of the new spouse.
How might life insurance needs change as families grow or circumstances shift? And why is it important to review policies regularly?
This is something obviously at some point you do want to talk to your life insurance, your financial advisor and or life insurance agent about is your financial needs are going to change. As your kids get older, as example, you may need less insurance as your kids get older because most of the policies I have will expire. The term insurance, because there's all kinds of insurance once my kids are out of school, because I've covered. I don't need that. I'm not. That's what I was planning for in case I were there. But once I get past that, presumably I've taken care of it. On the other hand, if I had more, if I bought a policy, when I got married and then had kids, well then I need to potentially get more insurance because now obviously that's somebody, that's another person, especially that's a person who won't be able to earn income for 18 years at least. That I need to take care of. And so there's that. But then the other underlying issue and this is where I advise clients, you need to do this planning sooner than later. Again, I'm not the numbers guy. I don't tell people how much insurance to get, but I do encourage to get it sooner than later because the problem with waiting is, yes, obviously there's a financial component. You have to be able to afford the insurance and stuff like that, is if you get sick. And unfortunately, as we get older, we're more likely to get sick. Our health is going to decline and we become less and less insurable, in which case the premium is going to go up and up. Assuming you're insurable at all, God forbid you get cancer, even if you're going to have a hard time, if ever, to get insurance again. And so that's why you got to do these things while you're young and healthy. The premiums, obviously the odds, and that's why it's cheaper because you're less likely to pass, but, at least, you get insurance that's for the rest of your life and, or let's say 20 years or 30 years, the premium's not going to go up. You get sick, it's there. And in fact, the other word of caution for the planning I use for my clients is, again, I don't tell people how much insurance to have, but if they only have work insurance, because a lot of people have life insurance policies to work. It's a benefit they get for full-time workers. They'll say, oh, you get 2 or 3 times your salary and you get that for free. If you pass away, the problem and so people think, oh, I have life insurance, and not really. Because the problem with that is if you actually did get sick and had to leave the job or couldn't work full time, that benefit goes away. It's a group policy. You have to be part of the group to get that insurance. You might even be paying extra to get a little extra coverage, but that policy goes away the minute you're not part of the group. And I've had that happen to a client, unfortunately. And again, this anecdote I use all the time. A young couple, they thought had $250,000 of life insurance. Husband got a brain tumor, had to leave work, lost the insurance, and now when he passed away, unfortunately, a year later, they had no life insurance. And obviously, at that point, once you hit you're diagnosed, it's too late to get any kind of insurance. So it's the planning. You need to do it. Obviously, you'll increase or decrease the amount of insurance needed if circumstances warrant it. But the number one issue, the first issue, is can you even get it? And waiting, and again, I'm not an insurance agent, but waiting increases the risk, and that's why you want to have a policy outside of work. That's one of the first questions I ask clients when we talk about their assets and life insurance: is that a work policy or is that something outside of work? Because something outside of work, you get sick, you just keep paying the premiums, it's there. As long as the term doesn't run out, you get sick, as long as you make the premium payments, then you have the insurance.
For somebody who's reviewing their estate plan this year, what's the smartest way to check whether their life insurance is set up correctly?
I mean, it's just a matter of calling, getting if there's some sort of statement, usually a lot of times the statements will have the beneficiaries listed, but obviously, otherwise you got to call them. Just call them and confirm who is the beneficiary. Obviously you want to make sure, is it individuals, or if you especially obviously have a trust, it should be the trust. Is making sure that those beneficiaries are set up correctly. And then the good news is once you do it, unless circumstances change, you don't have to do it again. So, it's just, and then the other is just the financial part, and that's what obviously, if you have a financial advisor, you'll be talking to them. Do you have enough insurance given, your current life status? What are you just bought a big house, or a house, and now, okay, that's a potential liability. Now you might want to have more life insurance, have more kids, all those or you're in a circumstance where you can afford more insurance. Those are all the things you're going to be looking at. So it's again it's set up correctly. That's one, but really it's the planning part of it. Do you have enough given the circumstances? And again, that's why I don't tell like I said, that's why you have a financial advisor who you talk with, who their job is not to say, oh, you should get $1 million of coverage. Their job is to say, okay, here's what you got. Here's where you want to go. If you were not here, here's what would need to happen. Based on that, how much insurance do you need? Okay, so it's not just pulling a number out of thin air. It should be looking at your circumstances, and there's a formula of what makes sense. Obviously, then how much you get and what kind of insurance you get will be dictated by how much premium you can afford.
A lot of great tips again in this episode. Thank you so much, Brian.
Well, thank you very much, Chelsea.
And thank you all for tuning in to today's episode of Estate Planning Beyond the Binder. Life insurance isn't just about having a policy. It's about making sure it's aligned with the rest of your estate plan so it truly protects the people you love. To learn more or schedule a consultation, visit ocwillsandtrusts.com or call Brian and his team today. And don't forget to leave a review, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.